Okay, let's see how this works. Let's see. Let's double check. So sorry for the delay. Trying it again. Let's take a look. Okay. Your profile. No. Just a second. Your channel. All right. Let's share this. Copy link. Oh boy. Okay, let's just double check and make sure everything's okay. Then we will get going. We'll just make sure. Okay, let's just double check and make sure everything's okay. Then we will get. Okay, well, it looks like we're live. I'm so sorry for the delay, everybody. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. That normally doesn't happen here. Welcome to episode number 9 of the UnShrink Me podcast. I am, for this purpose, not technically Dr. Patrick Lockwood, even though I am in many situations. Here I'm just Patrick because I'm trying not to get fired. So this is UnShrink Me, and UnShrink Me is a weekly romp through psychology, therapy Twitter, and various parts of mental health or mental unhealth, depending upon how you look at it. And the goal is just to have fun, mess around, make fun of the profession, because for those of you who don't know or those of you who are new to this, the profession's kind of a mess. And I'd like to be part of the solution of at least criticizing appropriately, if that makes sense. So I'm very much looking forward to today's broadcast. There's lots of fun things we're going to talk about with regard to Therapy Land, which is, again, the world's worst theme park on the planet. Okay, so before we get going, again, please don't sue me. This is just Patrick Lockwood ranting and raving about psychology. As always, I will be going to Twitter to look at my bookmarks to see which fun things on X relate to this week's episode. As always, if you're here sharing and chatting, I appreciate it. If you find this interesting, entertaining, or challenging, please share it with the people that you know. And let's have some fun. Like, share, and subscribe, all those fun things. Today, unfortunately, is not sponsored by Celsius, even though it never is. But thank you, Starbucks, for keeping me from being insane today. I need the caffeine. So let's do some scrolling. Let's get into the topics du jour. And as always, we will end with a dad joke of some kind. But let's do some scrolling. There's lots to talk about today. So much going on this week in the world of psychology, psychiatry, therapy, so on and so forth. So give me just a second to scroll. And if you're here, please feel free to chat and we will talk. Let's see. So one of my favorite academics online is this guy named Neil Rennick, and he tweeted something last week, an image, a screenshot, that says, "Sorry for the delay of my reply. I am simply too old and tired for such things. I lack concentration." It's sad. It's a very relatable thing as a professor, as a psychologist, because when you have so much going on, you get older and you get tired for sure. I just think it's funny. I don't know if I spoke about this last week. I don't believe that I did, but one of my favorite happenings, shout out to Taco Bell, okay? Taco Bell literally has an award show, I guess, for one of their corporate get-togethers. They tweeted this on 3/4. It's a tweet by Pop Crave. I'm going to just tweet about it real quick because I think it's funny. So Literally speaking, Taco Bell has an in memoriam segment where they kind of like talk about, just like when you do an award show, it's in memoriam the people who died from the industry. Well, they do an in memoriam for all the products that have died, and like shout out to Taco Bell for having a sense of humor for all the food things they did and all the ways they've helped stoners enjoy their late nights and all the long gone but not forgotten food from Taco Bell, like the quesarito and things like that. All right, let's get on to the next one. It's hopefully something more serious. Da 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 da. Where are we going? Oh, before I get to my first saved post that's more serious, something that I think is really important is I really want everyone to think about their mental health providers, whether they're, MSWs, MFTs, LPCCs, psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever. I want you to think about your mental health workers as people. And something I've noticed is that a lot of people idealize their therapists. And let me just say this. If you don't know that we're people, just spend 15 minutes watching any of the things that I put out there. We're regular people. And we have lots of problems, genuinely, such that like people in our profession are very sick and often are mentally ill. We have high divorce rates, high substance use disorder rates, high depression rates. Like the profession is not particularly healthy. And it should make you think twice about how you choose your provider and how healthy they actually are, by the way. So think twice, because it's really true that you can get a lot of help out of therapy and psychiatry, but it's also true that there's a lot of sick people. A lot of sick people. All right. So, tweet number one that we're going to spend some real time talking about. So there's this somewhat Twitter famous person named Kareem Carr, and his handle is at KREEM_CARR. He posted something 6 days ago that said something like this. It's a screenshot of a paper, Why Most Published Research Findings Are False. And so his tweet goes something like this. This is likely true for human-related studies, not because scientists are dishonest, but because the penny-wise, pound-foolish academic funding system incentivizes cheap, small, underpowered studies. Over more expensive, high-quality experiments that would actually be reliable. So there's two problems with human research, like psychology. So here's a little bit of how the sausage is made, if you're at all interested in how clinical psychology and psychiatry works. Kareem is correct. There are many peer-reviewed papers that are published every year. Scientists publish, relatively speaking, high-quality papers, but they're small samples. And these small samples mean that you can't really generalize the findings to larger groups of people. Because you do a niche study in some psych hospital in Connecticut somewhere, Connecticut is not very representative of the broader United States of America, let alone the world. So one randomized controlled trial on antidepressants and CBT for depression in Connecticut isn't going to tell you shit about what's going to happen in Kentucky or Mississippi or California where I am. Because the cultures are different, the values are different, the population demographics are different, the genetics out here are different. There's so many differences that you can look at dozens and dozens of papers and try to like summarize the findings or do a meta-analysis is what it's called and see if there's anything useful. But even that is a problem. And so he's correct in the sense that we have a systemic problem in research, which is we don't have the money and the energy and the resources to do large-scale studies. Like imagine if you could get, of the thousands of treatment centers in the United States, if you could get 100 of them to all collaborate, use the same exact interventions with the same exact level of trainee or licensed clinician for the same period of time with the same population. That would take literally millions of dollars to just do one of those. Probably hundreds of millions of dollars. And we just don't have that kind of money. No university does. No granting agency does. It's impossible. So we're almost never going to get high quality research because there's just no incentive to do that. The system is incentivized for small, less powerful, less reliable, less generalizable research. And the reason I say this is because as a professor, but as a clinician, I want everyone to understand that genuinely speaking, the mental health professionals who like these fads, EMDR, whatever, they're not bad people. They're fads, and because they're fads, what that means specifically is that people are going to overblow the findings. They're going to exaggerate and extol the virtues of the findings, when in reality it's just a bunch of small sample studies that kind of prove some benefit and kind of prove some value. But just because you have these studies doesn't mean it's actually the scientific truth per se, that these things are useful across all demographics and all people. So I like Kareem's post and I appreciate him sharing it. Next on the take. Well. Our friend ketamine. So there's a lot of research that's coming out right now. Because the guy deleted his account and deleted his post, I can't really share you. It was 6 days ago. Someone put out this really important post on the fact that ketamine is actually not as useful as we thought. So I'm going to rant for just a second. So there are all these companies like MindBloom that are like online telehealth prescription services that are trying to help people get access to ketamine. So ketamine is a psychedelic drug technically. It's more of a dissociative technically. And what ketamine should be doing for people, if it's used correctly, is providing temporary relief so that they can do other kinds of work to alleviate their serious depression symptoms. It might also be helpful for PTSD, but I kind of doubt that. And so what the literature looks like is it's evolving, like the science usually does for most things in clinical psychology. Now, ketamine is a big fad right now. It's been a fad for the last 3 or 4 years. A lot of psychiatrists believe in it, but a lot of people just think that it's going to be helpful. Some people think it's a cash cow. It's really sad because that's how the industry works. People want to make money. They want to make extra money with whatever's trendy. So here's the deal. Ketamine-assisted therapy might be helpful. So we have some reason to think it's helpful because the FDA did approve it once upon a time for serious treatment-resistant depression and acute suicidality. They approved the intranasal version of it, where you up the nose, called esketamine. But here's the deal. Most of the research shows that people don't get any substantial benefit past a month or so. What we're finding over and over and over again, that ketamine mostly is helpful short term, and in some cases, the pros do not outweigh the cons. Now, ketamine is easily misused by people, especially people who have serious mental health issues, because one of the most normal things, statistically speaking, is if you have a serious mental health issue, one of the ways that your mental health issue stays alive, per se, is by engaging in avoidance behaviors. If you look at the research on CBT, ACT, DBT, whatever it is, there is such a thing as pathological avoidance. All anxiety disorders, all trauma disorders are maintained by pathological avoidance. And so the problem with drugs like ketamine is because it's a dissociative, it will help you avoid if it's not used correctly because it's a dissociative. Dissociating is a version of avoiding psychiatrically, psychologically. Now, that doesn't mean that people are bad if they want to use ketamine. That doesn't mean that all ketamine clinics are run by bad people. Some of them clearly are. There's a lot of scams. There's a lot of people just looking to make a buck, an easy buck. And you get return customers because it doesn't work for very long. So I'm not trying to shit on ketamine altogether. I'm just trying to say that you should be careful because the people with serious treatment-resistant depression are probably not going to get what they're looking for from ketamine, even if it's done correctly, because it doesn't have good long-term data. In fact, electroconvulsive therapy, shock therapy, has better long-term data for treatment-resistant depression than ketamine does. Ketamine's just the fad right now. So I'm not shitting on MindBloom. I think maybe they're okay. I don't know. I don't know what their doctors are like. I don't know. I just think that there's a quick fix mentality in the West in particular, and we don't want to deal with the complicated reasons why people struggle with depression. So yes, severe treatment-resistant depression often is multifactorial. There's many things going on, right? There's like serious metabolic problems. There's serious brain issues, right? There might even be like mitochondrial dysfunction, like Chris Palmer talks about in the keto folks. There's probably serotonin deficits and norepinephrine deficits and all these things. So probably there's some utility to using these big like sledgehammer interventions like psych meds, like ECT, and like ketamine. The problem is that you have to look at all the different reasons why someone is sick. You know, the United States itself is very, very sick, right? And it's very sad that we don't look at all the different reasons why we're sick. We're sick politically, we're sick spiritually, we're sick with regard to our lifestyle. We sit around a lot. We don't do a whole lot. We don't put ourselves under necessary stress. We don't challenge ourselves. But then there's also a segment of the population that's working themselves to death because they're part of hustle and grind culture. And you've heard my thoughts if you listen to my other clips about that. Hustle culture is bullshit. It's for some people, but it's mostly for people who are miserable and who want to be miserable. And I don't want any of you to be miserable. If you want to be miserable, that's your choice. Feel free to be part of hustle culture. I don't encourage it. So what I will say is like a quick ketamine experience, a quick ayahuasca experience, a quick LSD experience. Don't do that. That's such a waste of your time. And the research is actually backing that statement up. You know, short-term ketamine doesn't seem to be very helpful. Now, maybe there's a better way to do it, and maybe we'll find that, and God willing, they will. But I just don't see it happening right now. So be very careful. You know, be very careful. All right, back to the bookmarks. So please be careful of the quick fix mentality. It's just not good for you. I genuinely believe it's not. All right. Okie dokie, back to the bookmarks. Just to make sure. Did I miss anything? Okay. So, next up on UnShrink Me is one of my favorite people on Twitter. Her name is the No BS Therapist, and her handle is @TweetATherapist. She said, very thoughtfully, to be very reductionistic, so she's owning that it's very oversimplified, hard times plus support equals resilience. Hard times minus support equals trauma. Okay, let's see if I can get away with this. Just a sec. Let me tweet at her so that she knows I'm here and she can come hang out if she would like. Just a sec. Okay, so the reason I like her, or one of the reasons I like her, is because I assume it's a her because her image on her profile is a her. Is because she tries to be honest. I think she's not perfect, like any of us are not perfect, but she tries to be honest. So let's walk this out. Hard times plus support is resilience. Hard times minus support is trauma. So here's why I don't generally agree with that. Excuse me. So the reason I don't generally agree with that is because hard times is not very specific, right? And she was honest, she was being reductionistic. But also, I don't know what you mean by support, because support could be professional support like therapy, case manager, psychiatrist, spiritual support, clergy, whatever. Or it could be informal. It could be like, you know, family and friends. But also, the quality of your support kind of matters. Like, most people suck at getting what they need in relationships because they don't know how to articulate where they're at and what they need from people. So they're not good at communicating what they need. And so if you really want to have the right kind of support, you might have the people you need in your corner, but you don't know how to use them. So some people have support, technically speaking, but they don't know how to use them because they can't communicate with them. Other people are okay at communicating, but they have shitty people around them because they're like afraid to be themselves or speak up for themselves or whatever it is. Yet other people have the right people around them and they can communicate, but they're just very uninsightful. So I think it's not as simple as all that. Also, I don't agree that trauma happens when you just don't have enough support. I think that there's literature that that agrees with that, but I think trauma also happens when the experience you're having internally is beyond what you believe you're capable of tolerating. So what you believe you're capable of tolerating might be dependent in some cases on the support you have because you might lean on people. That's how you're built. But some people don't lean on people. They're temperamentally very kind of isolated and introverted. So they're more interested in not leaning on people in general. Not that they shouldn't. It's just that, you're not really interested in leaning on people. So you actually probably need more people than you have, but you probably don't need as many as you think. So what I would say is it's really important to think about the kind of support because some people in your life just suck. Some people are too immature and too selfish to actually be there for you. And you need to figure out how to deal with those people and find better people. So that's what I will say about that, not to pick on her. I think she's red. Okie dokie. Okie dokie. My next tweet was in response to someone from gay Twitter. It's a thing. So the original post was about the idea that the individual is kind of walking through the thought process of, is having a peaceful life the same thing as having a boring life? And I'd like to vamp on this for a second because a lot of people, especially in the West, in the United States, there's like reality TV culture, right? Our fucking president is a part of it. And it's left a really bad taste in my mouth because I believe it's terrible for our culture. Like, you can like Kim Kardashian, you can like the Kardashians, you can like the Real Housewives, you can like whatever bullshit drama, and that's fine. I don't have the stomach for it. I think it's just boring as shit. But some of you probably really love it, and that's awesome and good for you because, you probably need it in your lives. As a professional, I deal with drama for a living and I get paid for it, so I just don't want to watch it, And so some people, I think, confuse interpersonal chaos and interpersonal drama for an exciting life. Now, people who are temperamentally extroverted probably are genuinely excited when there's some conflict because they're trying to figure it out and find a way to navigate better and be closer and have more fun. That's probably true too. So there's probably a personality variable there too. But our culture is really sick, or one of the reasons why I think the United States is a very, very sick country is because we have made reality TV via YouTube, via Twitter, TikTok Live, all these things, and all the standard TV shows, right? Like everything on Bravo, everything, all the news shows, everything in news media, CNN, Fox News, all these assholes. It's literally all reality TV. It's not news, it's reality TV, and it's gross. It's actually grosser than Bravo. I would much rather watch Bravo. Bravo is more honest than CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News because at least they're coming by their narcissism honestly and their patheticness honestly. And so what I would say is genuinely the case that when we have reality TV culture, what's happening is we're incentivizing people, to be dramatic, not for the purposes of having relational clarity and dealing with things, but just for the pure purpose of getting attention. And so having chaos and drama is normal in relationships because people are imperfect and none of us are like Buddhist monks. Obviously, I'm not, and I'm a fucking professional. What I believe to be true is that if drama is its right size and it's appropriate for the circumstance, then yeah, of course, it's useful. But reality TV is not the right size and appropriate for the circumstance. It's for the sake of just getting attention. So, like in the news world, it's like if it bleeds, it leads. So, like the more gory and disgusting and drastic and disaster, the more it gets attention, right? And reality TV culture is all about the if it bleeds, it leads, just like the news nowadays. And the problem is, I think a lot of people have been so accustomed to chaos and drama and reality TV culture that is what people believe, I think, is normal. Is like that is normal. And so if there's peace in their life, which means there's no chaos or drama, their life is boring. But I don't think that's true at all. I think you can have a, relatively speaking, chaos-free life and drama-free life and not be bored or boring. I think that there's a difference between boring and peace. In fact, just to be a little nerdy and technical about it, one of my favorite researchers is the psychologist out of, I think, University of Central Florida or South Florida. I forget, and I apologize. Her name is Erin Westgate. And I believe her expertise is studying boredom, believe it or not. So what Erin says, I think it's Erin Westgate, I hope I'm not getting that wrong, is that boredom is the absence of an expected feeling. So to me, if you're experiencing peace, that just means that everything is basically okay and you're expecting everything to be okay, which is different than boredom, where you're expecting things to be dramatic, but then everything is okay and you're expecting things to be dramatic, right? So you're bored if your normal expectations is drama and chaos. And I genuinely believe that some people really love drama and it's their personality style, they're histrionic or narcissistic or whatever it is. And that's fine. That's how you're built. That's the life you want to live. That's how you thrive. So you need to find niches where you can survive in life. But the average person, I don't think needs to live like a narcissist or a histrionic person. I just don't. I think the average person should figure out the difference between peace and boredom and maybe not let reality TV culture, social media culture, news media culture be their norm, right? Like if you think about what life has looked like for most of history, you weren't basing what is normal on internet-based things. You're basing what was normal based upon the here and now, the people in your immediate environment, which means that the drama of media culture, more broadly, isn't realistic because, like, if you go out there to the gym, to the coffee shop, whatever it is, people aren't yelling and screaming at each other and talking about their affairs and backstabbing each other. They're just getting their coffee on the way to work or whatever it is. That's normal. That's not boring. That's just peace, right? So for me, I advocate for peace. Peace of the emotional kind, of the interpersonal kind, if that makes sense. Because I think drama is probably useful as entertainment to some degree. You know, good Broadway shows or good operas or good movies or songs. There's appropriate drama there. But I genuinely don't believe that... I just genuinely don't believe that the drama we face or that we believe is normal is actually good for us. Like, I think reality TV culture is to some degree not helping society in any way, shape, or form. Now, I don't mean this in the alarmist sense of like, oh my God, society is going to die or something. I just mean this in the sense of like, why do we have to care about the drama of anything? Politicians, social media personalities, like who cares? Just like get what you need from them and move on. You know? All right. So that is my pitch for peace and my pitch for a less boring life where your expectations meet what's realistic in your life. All right. Next up. So this is a post from, he calls himself Andrew Buzari, MD, and his handle is at DRANDREWB. He said yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, the longer I work in medicine, the more convinced I am that anxiety and depression are a just response, like a justified response excuse me, in a deeply unjust society. So, Andrew, let's talk about this. Um, let me tweet at him right now. Okay. So the longer I work in medicine, the more convinced I am that anxiety and depression are a just or justifiable response in a deeply unjust society. So I think, you know, it's hard to figure out what people mean when they say anxiety and depression, right? Because there's clinical depression and anxiety, and then there's like, I'm having an anxious reaction or a low mood reaction to an expectable stressor in my life. And it's more of a spectrum than it is like a black and white, you are or you aren't depressed. And for many people, not all, but many. So I want someone to seriously, I'm not being sarcastic, I'm not technically attempting to be funny. I want someone to explain to me what a just society looks like. I think people are honestly, I think there's a reason why people say these things. Like, I think people like the concept of justice as like an aspirational concept because it gives them some sense of like stability and certainty in the world, that there's a greater order that's going to look out for everybody and things are going to be fair. I don't believe that's true. Like, how is life fair? Can someone give me like conclusive proof that if you like looked at everything that's happened in history that life is fair? Like, I don't think life is fair at all. I don't think in the Darwinian sense of things life is fair. I don't think in the like the luck sense of things life is fair. I don't think any period in history has ever been fair. Now, on a spectrum, maybe things are more fair now compared to where they used to be 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. But is life actually fair? And does it need to be fair for us to be psychologically well adjusted? Like, yes, if your society is in chaos, it is normal to feel anxious and depressed, right? A low mood response or an intense anxiety response, if you're in the middle of a war, or if you're in the middle of political turmoil, or whatever, you should be on edge. That makes sense. That's a normal response to a messy, chaotic experience. I think that's different than life is just, or reality should be just. Now, I don't mean this in the stoic sense of like you can just make your way through anything, because some people can't. Some people are too fragile, too weak, too unskilled, too unlucky to literally make it. And that's not fair. And that is reality, though. Reality is some people are screwed. And that happens intentionally because sometimes people are evil and cruel and they want to hurt people and destroy people, like Hitler and Stalin and Mao and all these terrible people in history. And then some people are ignorant but evil, right? They're too stupid to like be considerate the right way. And then some people are just ignorant and like neutral and like not actually helping. And all three of those forces, evil, ignorant and evil, and ignorant and neutral, can cause people to suffer unnecessarily. And unnecessary suffering happens all the time. But I don't think it's reasonable to make the fulcrum, the cause, a just society or not. I think that's silly. I think it's very infantile when you would like to pretend that society should be just. I think it's like pretending that Santa Claus should be real and give you the appropriate amount of presents. When people talk about justice, all I can think is like they never got past the fact that Santa Claus isn't real. That's what it rings like to me. Because there is no fairness in life. There are things you can do to make things more relatively fair, but the idea that things will ever be perfectly fair or relatively equal for people, places, and things is not true. It is just straight up luck that I was born into the family that I was born into, in the period in history that I was born, and that I was born with the personality style that I inherited from people and cultures. Like, None of that is under my control. I have good luck with regard to the things that have brought me to this point in my life. There are many people that have come into my life not because of my magical skills or intelligence or good looks, but because, however you want to think about it, it's luck, it's God, whatever works for you. Like, it's just luck to me. Like, you can luck out. Now, sometimes if you want to think of it from the perspective of like preparation plus opportunity equals luck, right? So did I prepare some? Did I work my ass off in grad school? Did I work 3 jobs? Yes, I did bust my ass, and I did some things to get here. And so I'm not downplaying my relative contributions to my mental health and my success in life, such that it is. What I'm saying is that justice is not the reason people are mentally ill. Injustice, societal injustice is not the reason people are mentally ill, Doc. It is literally the case that some people are just ill, right? My response to him was, some people are just ill. I said, incorrect. Some people have genuine illnesses that have nothing to do with the justice or injustice of society. Other people have shitty lifestyles and shitty principles, which is partially their fault and partially the way they were brought up in culture. Other people have shitty circumstances beyond their control, and then some people have a combo of all 3. And so if you want to know what life is really like and how you can really handle your feelings better, maybe consider what category of thing and category of person you find yourself to be. Because some people are really stuck in terrible circumstances. For instance, a lot of homeless people, unhoused people, whatever the fucking political correct phrase is, a lot of people genuinely are in terrible circumstances. So some people that are homeless have no job skills that work in this economy, in this market, or they have serious mental illnesses that are hard to manage. So they're stuck in a positive feedback loop of being unemployable and so ill that they can't do anything, right? But then there are other people who are homeless, for instance, who do have job skills and do have work experience that will make them valuable in our market and our economy, but they're mentally ill, and so they're having a hard time getting their foot in the door or whatever it is. Yet other people have their various mental health problems and drug problems. They have family and friends that could support them, and they have job skills and all this stuff. So they have a lot going for them, but they're still homeless. And maybe they're homeless by choice because they actually want to keep using drugs, for instance. And they don't want to deal with the demands of their family and their culture and society. That's another group of people that exist. There's various types of groups of people in the homeless community. I've treated most of them. And what I will tell you is that if you think of people as one-dimensional, they're just screwed by society and it's not fair and we have to change society, then you're an idiot. And the reason you're an idiot is because, although it's true society needs to change, you're oversimplifying a complicated biopsychosocial problem, right? So yes, change systems, but also where's personal responsibility? Where is space for people's personal preferences? If someone wants to keep using drugs, is it really our responsibility to tell them to stop using drugs, for instance? Like, I think a lot of people should be abstinent. But that doesn't mean that it's my responsibility to make them abstinent. I'm not a fascist. I don't have the ability, I don't have the magical skills to make people stop using drugs. I've run drug rehabs for years. I've been working in the rehab industry for 15 years. There's just no way that I'm smart enough, eloquent enough, funny enough, whatever it is, to make people stop using drugs, especially people who are not incentivized to stop using drugs. Now, can we change the system to change the incentives? Yes. But that's not enough because many people need to be more intrinsically motivated to change their behavior. So I vehemently disagree with Andrew, Dr. B, or whatever his name is, because people are complicated. The biopsychosocial perspective means that There's many layers to a person's behavior, a person's illness. And looking at one layer like a just society is just stupid. It's just like it's clickbait is what it is. And I guess I'm a victim to the clickbait that I read. Okay. All right. I want to put on my consultant hat right now. We're going to switch away from the clinical world and the psychology world, a little bit psychology, and move a little bit closer to the consulting world. So, here we go. So there's a geneticist on Twitter who I think is very, very smart, and he always has really incisive and thoughtful takes. He's a classic example of a very smart academic who has a perspective, and he defends it vehemently and thoughtfully. So I think, if I'm saying his name correctly, his name is Sasha Gusev. I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right, Sasha. Okay. So Sasha, again, is a geneticist, and I think he works at Harvard. Smart guy. So not trying to cut at his credentials or anything. I'm not one to attack those kinds of things anyways. So Sasha posted a table. Now, I wish he would have posted the reference, but he posted a table that lists the various types of predictors of job performance. And it's a screenshot from an article written by Sackett in 2023. So he highlighted the various variables that predict whether someone's going to perform well at a job. So the variable that predicts the best, that has the best predictive validity in a scientific sense, at 0.42 was employment interviews that are structured. And it predicted better than job tests and IQ test, basically. And conscientiousness, which is in the literature a lot. So what I would say, Sasha's main point is that this whole DEI thing is there's bias in the hiring process, right? And when you actually look at the literature about like what actually helps you hire people effectively and what actually gives you like long-term success with employees is, did you actually use the correct hiring parameters? And as a consultant, this is what I think about all the time. How did you choose this person? And are you choosing the right people the right way to work in your company? So he said, this is the quote, structured interviews are indeed much more accurate at predicting employee performance with lower racial bias. Unstructured interviews are really bad, as are other seemingly objective metrics like years of experience. DEI here was just fair and effective hiring. So what he's specifically referring to is the idea that if you create the correct questions that you ask the same way to all potential candidates at a job, you'll get better employees because, genuinely speaking, if you're asking questions the exact same way across all types of interviews, no matter what they look like, sound like, number of years of experience, they're going to answer these structured things in such a way that gives you a better idea of how they actually function. Because if you do an unstructured interview where you're just off the cuff and you ask whatever comes to mind, you're going to miss important questions, right? At minimum. So what I said was, so it's actually a tad more complicated than this. I did this a day ago. As a consultant, I help employers craft the right set of hiring and firing metrics. IQ alone or structured interviews alone are rarely helpful. You actually need multiple data types in order to get a good understanding of who the person actually is. So personality, IQ, standardized interviews, questions, collateral reports like former bosses, at minimum if you're hiring for a long-term employee, right? And so the important thing here is if you want a long-term employee, you need not just those structured questions which you ask everybody, which is important. I think genuinely important. But also I think it's important at least my experience doing consulting work for a marketing company, treatment centers, things like that, that people are complicated. So maybe the role they're going to work isn't that complicated, right? So like in my industry, we have entry level jobs called techs or resident assistants. And those techs, those resident assistants, are usually very simple jobs. It's like get patients from point A to point B, make sure they take their meds, make sure they're following the rules and not acting out and sleeping with each other, and make sure that the house is clean, all these things. So it's a very like entry level babysitter job. But like just asking standard questions about, in my case, how long have you been sober? How are you taking care of yourself? All these kinds of things. Those questions are good, but also I want to know how conscientious you are. And not necessarily because the literature says conscientiousness is a good predictor of work behavior. It is, as is IQ. But also I want to know, like in the particular culture of my program that I'm hiring you for, are you conscientious enough to deal with the very difficult personalities you have to deal with? Because what I've noticed is more conscientious people are better at handling these very chaotic and messy people in my treatment center. Because that's how unwell they are. They're not bad people. They're just very unwell. Not weird. Now, in other settings, people might not need to be so conscientious, right? But also, what kind of culture do you have? For instance, in the West, there's kind of a dichotomy of more masculine cultures and more feminine cultures, like bro culture versus not bro culture. And like if you run a bro culture program in the recovery world, only certain personality types are really going to fit there. But if your culture is not very bro culture, like one of my good friends in the industry has the exact opposite of bro culture. It's very prototypically feminine and prototypically not like get up at 5 a.m. and bust your ass all day and stop complaining, right? And so because of that, you need to hire different kinds of people. You're trying to help a certain kind of patient, so you need to hire certain kinds of staff to help them. So there's like a culture fit, which you can certainly ascertain with some structured questions, but also it's personality testing, which is very helpful. To some degree, IQ. To some degree, it's important if they're like folks that are a little more psychopathic also can be a question because they might not help very much. They might look very competent, but they're actually not. So there's various personality things I want to try to smell out as a guy who hires people in the treatment industry, for instance, and as a consultant. Like, I want to find, for instance, people that are more narcissistic and put them in positions of power. Because people that are more temperamentally narcissistic by personality trait are going to be more driven to achieve in a good way, right? They're going to like power and they're going to want to get attention for it, which means they might be better leaders to some degree. Now, that doesn't mean high trait narcissism is the best predictor of leadership, but it's certainly important because I don't want someone who is thinking of themselves as unimportant. I don't want a super humble leader. I don't think there's like a one-dimensional way of looking at leadership, for instance. So there needs to be some narcissism, some neurodivergence, if you want to think of it that way, in order to be a good leader, right? So I would say it's more complicated, but I do appreciate Sasha because he is very smart and he's saying something important, I think. All right. So this is 11 hours ago. I talked about this guy last week. I'm going to talk about him again. Okay. Just tweeting at him. So his name is Justin Garson, I don't know, at JUSTIN_GARSON. He says, I've been thinking a lot about mental health and purpose. In all the interventions I went through, no doctor or therapist ever said, Justin, you need a sense of purpose, a goal that dominates everything and drives your choices. What role does purpose play in a good life? It's a great question. So here's what I would say. Kind of across personalities. Like, I think a personality is a great moderator or predictor of success in life because I think personality is just one of those like niche creating tools. Excuse me. So like a very conscientious person, for instance, they're going to survive and thrive in a niche where being orderly and on time and fastidious and precise and all these things is good and helpful and helps them thrive. Whereas like if you're a musician, I don't know how helpful that is because like maybe you need to be super creative and wild, right? So like if you're a super conscientious person, you might not thrive so well in like an art school. You might lose your mind, for instance. Even though you might have good art skills, you might be very creative and talented, you might be very pissed and you feel stuck in an environment that's not fitting who you are. So for me, I don't think the conversation is as simple as like, what's your purpose? Because your purpose isn't just predicted or predicated by whatever existentially is meaningful to you. So like for a lot of people, it's meaningful to have a family. It's meaningful to have a career. It's meaningful to have a God or spiritual life. And so those three things, family, career, spiritual life, are like sources of meaning for people. And I think those things matter. And I think it's unique to every person, but like you're not going to get very far by just telling someone to go to work. Like going to work is not going to cure your depression. It might even make it worse if it's the wrong environment. And so I think figure out who you are, generally, like what your personality is. And if you figure out your personality, then you might be able to figure out what feels or seems or actually is more meaningful. Because a super conscientious person who's not very creative is not going to feel very meaningful in an art school. Excuse me for just a second. Sir? I have a friend for you. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. This is Max. Do you see Max? Look at this guy. He's going to want to run away in about 5 seconds. Here we go. Here we go. He's like, what's happening? But like, are my cats giving me purpose? Yeah, kind of. Not really. Like, but that doesn't have anything to do with what really matters to me in life. Like, they're fun and they're cool and they're loud and they're noisy. But like, genuinely speaking, you know, your purpose is not just what society says your purpose should be or what religion says or philosophy says. It's also predicated on who you actually are, you know? So if you're a kick-ass athlete and you're super talented because you're great at running or basketball or football or golf or whatever it is, like that's not just a career, that's a set of skills and like it's probably part of your personality, like the athlete personality per se. And I've worked with lots of athletes and kind of done some coaching with them and like that's not just a career, it's a way of being. It's a culture. And so your purpose is partly due to your culture. It's partly due to your personality and it's partly due to your circumstances and your skills and your beliefs. And so if you don't have your personality, your culture, your skills, and your beliefs like in alignment, then you're not going to have purpose. So I don't think it's just like find purpose and you'll be fine. I think it's like figure out who you actually are first, despite how you feel per se, and then you can do something useful, maybe. That's my thought. And I think that's kind of all I had for today at this point. I kind of, I think that's kind of all I had. I'm just going to double check the comments here real quick. All right. Yep. Well, here's what I will say, folks. It's really weird, the world we live in right now. Because there are people who think everything is great and getting better, and there are people who think like we're on the Titanic and the violin players saying, gentlemen, it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve with you, and they just go down playing. And it's really weird to imagine that like one particular narrative is true here. So here's what I will say. The reason I created this podcast is there is a lack of sanity in the world right now. And the people that are supposedly the voices of reason, like the big podcasters and stuff, are not really acting like it to some degree. Now, some people are doing a good job of not being caught up in the mess and the fray of things. And some people are living in this like everything's great or everything's terrible life. We can make it through most things, notwithstanding like a world war or a nuclear war. I think we're going to be okay. And it's more important than ever to take good care of yourself and not burn yourself out trying to fix society or fix yourself. Like, there are things you can do to make your life better, and I hope you do them, right? Eat good food, sleep enough, drink enough water, drink enough caffeine, have some good sex, go to the gym, work out, take care of yourself, exercise, keep your mind engaged, have good relationships. These are all important things. But I pray, for the love of God, don't take social media seriously. Don't even take me seriously. Like, why would you take me seriously? I'm some asshole in a coat. Like, who cares? Like, life is really short. And I think when we stop worrying about the bullshit that just doesn't matter, which is most things, like if you go to Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, almost nothing that people are talking about actually matters to their day-to-day experience. We are just arguing about such bullshit. The things that actually matter are the people, places, and things that are right here that are actually good for your well-being. Like, are you sleeping enough? Is your environment healthy enough? Do you have sick people in your life that you should have a better relationship with and better boundaries with? Do you need to communicate your needs better? Do you need to eat better and not destroy your gut? Right? Like, I love terrible food, but I'm trying not to do it because I know it's bad for my longevity. Like, I don't want to have Alzheimer's, I want to sleep better so I can not have Alzheimer's, So, like, please remember what matters, because it's so easy to get caught up in the crap that everyone thinks, and what almost everyone thinks just doesn't matter, I would say. Really what matters are the people, places, and things right here, right in front of you. Your friends, your family, your colleagues, the people you're in love with. That's what matters. So I hope you focus on that and make that better. Make your life better first, and then make your family and your immediate community's life better first. And have fun. Joke around. Like, don't you think life is kind of short? Isn't it more fun to joke around when you're like dealing with society, because you don't know these people? Life is kind of absurd, right? Or at least I think it's absurd. And on that note, as I always do at the end of these live streams, is I try to end with a dad joke, because although I'm not currently a father, I try to have dad energy wherever I go. So I once worked with this patient. He was obsessed with squirrels. And I don't mean like metaphorically obsessed, like literally obsessed. He studied all the different types of squirrels. He let, R.I.P. Peanut from last year. Like, he loved squirrels. And we sat for our first session, and he just told me all about his obsession with squirrels. And he just went on and on and on. And I was like, there's no way this is real. He's just trying to put one over on me. And he kept talking. And at the end of the 55 minutes, he looks at me and he says, "Doc, what do you think is going on with me?" And I said, "You know what? I just think you're a nutcase." All right, so this has been episode 9 of UnShrink Me. I'm sorry that the prior episodes weren't archived on Twitch. I will see you next Saturday at some point, at some time, probably in the afternoon, like always. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe if any of this is interesting and or helpful. I look forward to reading your comments and discussing more of this on Twitter. If you want to find me on Twitter at PsychCheckup. I'm here to have fun. I'm here to joke around. Let me know what you need. Otherwise, it's been great chatting and talking and ranting and raving. And I guess I will see you next week. Have a good weekend. Take good care of yourselves, please.